in the actual grand scheme of time, what is our life? But a vapor, right? But a blade of grass. It is so small. Like it is so tiny in the grand scheme of time of what has played out so far and what's to come, right? If you want to use the word eternity, like it is it's a blip. You can't even call it a speed bump because it's smaller than that. It's like the pebble on the road, man. Like it's so tiny that like you have to start asking questions about what am I here for? Why am I here? Like, and if you haven't asked those questions, I would encourage you to dive into those questions. So what are the secrets? How do some of the most successful entrepreneurs find the freedom that we all got into business for in the first place? How did they find the time, energy, and resources to launch and scale strong? And how do entrepreneurs like us align our time, money, and energy in a way that will allow us to reach what we set out to achieve? These are the key questions, and this community will give you the answers. Welcome to the Prosperity Movement. Welcome to the Prosperity You podcast, where we talk everything prosperity in you. What does that even mean? Today, we're going to be going over the 4 pillars of prosperity. This is the foundation of everything that we do and how we live our lives in our businesses and our family life, every aspect of who we are and how we operate. This is I would go ahead and say it's like the compass. It encompasses us and it helps us keep us on course. So today I have the partners and the founders of the Prosperity Movement. I have Zach Shanky on the line. We got Travis Hunter Hennigan. And this is going to be a lot of fun. We decided that we were going to do this podcast to really just ignite the prosperity within as many people as we can, because we're living in a world right now that isn't exactly coming from a place of overflow and abundance. There's a lot of selfishness and a lot of me, myself, and I mean, it's written all over your iPhone, right? I, me, I. And we really believe in this concept of service leadership. And so I'm really excited to be here with my partners, my best friends, doing this podcast here today and in the coming podcast, because they like, we do life together. We pretty much do like every aspect of business and just enjoying doing more of the things we love with the people we love most. And so my name is Brian Chamberlain, and let's dive right into it. The 4 pillars of prosperity. What are they, guys? I'll let you guys kind of chime in here. Zach, what's the first pillar?
Time.
Time is the first pillar. Travis, what's the second pillar? It's a test in the morning. It's too early. Too early.
So you teach a lot more condensed version than I do separately. So I don't know exactly which 4 that you can't put me on the spot like that.
I'm putting Travis on. I can't even believe this. Like I just finished talking about how this is like how we live our life. This is our credo.
I have 12, though I put a bunch more in there.
That's right. You got a bunch more in your program for sure. So
Travis,
go ahead
Travis, what's the first one? You do the first one.
Time.
Nice. Thank you.
Got that one down.
Yeah. Zach, what's the second one?
Health.
Awesome. The third one's relationship. And this is I would say that most people put the last one in our 4 pillars of prosperity up front. And it has a lot to do with what I believe is part of the problem in the world today. Although this is a big piece of an equation, it's like, it's not the car, it's the gas, right? It's the important piece of the equation that will help just feed the rest of the pillars, right? Which is cash flow. It's wealth. It's money, right? And the reality is a lot of people believe in this concept that money is the root of all evil. Well, it's not the root of all evil. It's not the problem. It's a big part of the solution, as a matter of fact. It's just that people are categorizing it in a way that probably from a value standpoint shouldn't be the number one thing that they're focused on. We believe time is the most important piece of the equation. Why do we believe that? Because the reality is that if you're listening to this right now, you don't know how much time you have. You don't know if you have 17 minutes. You don't know if you have 17 days, months, 17 years. Hopefully we all have another 70 years. But the reality is that we have no idea how much time we have. And so that is our most valuable piece of the equation. You can't buy back time. You can't get time back. Once it's spent, it is what it is. You spend money, you can always earn more money, right? That's the reality of it. Then we believe health is the most, like the second most important, because, well, first of all, if you're not healthy, typically you don't have as much time, right? So we want to be good stewards with our health. We want to be healthy so that we can have more time to be more impactful and ultimately be able to, invest and pour into our relationships. That's why relationship is the next thing. But what does everybody say when we're on an airplane, when they got the, they go through the emergency procedures and all that kind of stuff, and they let you know who are you supposed to focus on first before you put on someone else's face mask, right?
Like myself and I, right?
That's right. I mean, you do have to water your own grass first. You do have to take care of yourself. You can't give from a place of overflow if you yourself are not healthy. So it's important for us to really be focused on time, and be really intentional with our time, be really intentional and focused on our health so that we can just live from a place of overflow and feed into our relationships. And then, of course, cash flow is something that is going to help support all three of those. If I have more cash flow, well, guess what? I can hire more people to be more impactful with my time. I might not be able to buy back time that I've already spent, but I sure as heck can leverage cash flow to create more time for myself, to be able to make healthier and healthier decisions as I continue to grow in wisdom and all that kind of stuff. And then also be able to pour more into my loved ones, both from a generosity standpoint and a time standpoint, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how the first three pillars you can actually you don't really pull from those to go into the money, right? Like just because you have more time doesn't mean you're going to have more money. Just because you're healthier doesn't mean you're going to have more money, right? Like the last one kind of is a standalone pillar that helps with all the other ones. You can somewhat buy back time when you have more money, right? Like you said, you can hire the people to help you with any position, right? Or even just have a whole team that does everything for you at some point, right? You can somewhat buy health. You have access to better healthcare, better health facilities and gyms and stuff. Like you can, to some degree, buy some health. And then also, of course, relationships, like for me, I don't live in the same state as my parents. And so I can buy and have the time to, to go have those relationships with them, or I can have them flown up with over here and stuff. Right. I was going to say that like people generally get like the time and the money all twisted up in the wrong directions. Like, oh, I don't have enough time to be able to go do these things that you guys talk about, or I don't have enough money to go do this, to spend with the time to do it. And it's like, but then I started thinking, I was like, but they also get the health kind of twisted up too. And they also get the relationships. And I say I'm equally guilty of this. Like I have just as bad and sappy of a story as anybody else, right? But once you start getting a little bit more, and I think the best word that you used, Brian, was intentional. When you get more intentional with these, you don't have to get great. You don't have to get perfect. You don't even have to get like anything amazing. Like if you get intentional with it, it changes everything. What were you saying, Zach?
I feel like each pillar helps the previous pillars. So just like what you said with cash, how cash helps all the other three pillars, I feel like health not only is focused on health, but it also helps you with the time. Relationships helps you in certain aspects of health and time, right? Yeah. Because relationships isn't just familiar, right? So like even us, right? We have our own relationship as friends and as business partners. Well, guess what? You guys are on sales calls and I'm not. So you guys are actually helping me with my time. And so it's almost like each pillar helps all the previous pillars. And I also love the priority of those pillars, because I think that's just really, really key. And every time I find myself getting stressed out or whatever, I like to just refocus and be like, okay, how am I living intentionally? Am I really using my time wisely? What's my health like? What am I focused on there? Or am I too focused on pillar number 4? And it helps me to recenter, because like Travis, none of us live it perfectly,
Totally. And I mean, it's like the credo and the code of, like you said, and to the health part, like health not only helps you with time, but it also helps you with your relationships, because the healthier you are, the better your relationships are going to be. The more you love yourself, the more you can love it on others, like it's sorry for getting all King James there for a second. I just can't help but get all what's that that love story between those the two, the Romeo and Juliet, as I don't know, the art behind the every once in a while I try to get poetic and I got to take a step back. But anyways, to get back to this, this credo though, honestly, like you said, it like really helps you prioritize from a value standpoint, how you're living your life. I'll never forget, Zach. We had, I'm not going to mention names because I think it's important that we hold up the integrity of some of our business relationships, but having that, if you remember that Stanley Cup champion and Olympic gold medalist that came hit our desk, and then we had that 5-time New York Times bestselling author, and we made a decision not based on money. We made a decision based on the other 3 pillars to one of those individuals, which was the 5-time New York Times bestselling author who had been featured on Oprah and all that kind of stuff, very prestigious and like high level individual. It was very evident that the relationship piece of the equation for that organization wasn't as important to us. And I just knew that if we were to say yes, although that would have been a big contract, that would have been a really amazing, cash flow, if you will, it also probably would have created most likely, based on the conversations that we were having, would have created more stress. It would have created and I think that you actually built a company to just scraping 7 figures in 14 months before we were working together. And then when you witnessed that, you were like, you can do that?
Yeah.
How don't you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, that company was all about money. That's it. It was, how do we get more sales? And who cares about fulfillment? Now, granted, we were decent at fulfilling, but we also had those clients, the nightmare clients that were just constantly messaging us, or they'd flip out because there was one misspelled word on a massive sales page, and they would just start swearing at us and all this stuff. And they would call us on our personal cell phones in the middle of the night and things like that we had a bunch of those. And that was just not worth it. And it got to the point of some serious health concerns for me, and probably for the other 2 partners as well. But I was definitely doing all the work. Anyway, so there's, at the end of the day, I had to leave that business, and I'm super grateful. I met Brian because he kind of helped in that process. He never once told me to do it, right? In fact, quite the contrary. He told me you'd be kind of dumb to leave that very wealthy, profitable business. But I didn't care. The moment we made a decision that was not based on money, it just resonated with me so well that I said, I don't care about the money. I care about my health and well-being. Screw the money. We'll get that back. We can always figure that out. And so that's kind of where Brian and I in our relationship started.
And it didn't take long. I mean, we've when I take a look at it, every year we've more than doubled since we started. We're going on year 3 right now, and that's a pretty exciting thing, and we've got some really interesting, I joke about how I used to live in a van down by the river singing for my supper, to getting to a point of working with established corporations and outfits, and then having to start over, living with my mother-in-law at one point in time to try to get things in order, and that's a painful scenario. Okay, I love my mother-in-law, but that really does something to a man's psyche, I promise. There's, in the good book, it talks about leaving and cleaving. I believe there's a reason for it, just because I've experienced it. But we were able to get into a position. We got this beautiful house here in this amazing town, and then I'm in an office down the street right now, and when we look at prosperity movement, a lot of people think of the word prosperity and they think Lamborghinis, and they think beaches, and I think that that's a beautiful thing to be able to experience. For us, these 4 pillars of prosperity really drive every aspect of what we're doing and what we're building. When Zach was casting this concept of an empire, an empowerment empire with me, and it just started to resonate. If we could, we're getting to a point now where cash flow it's not it's an afterthought, because there's more. We're record month after record month. We continue to grow this company. And not only that, but the skill sets, the earning skill sets that we have. But instead of investing, which I don't know if you could call it an investment, unless you maybe at some point in time, maybe we do have a business where we have automobiles and all that kind of stuff and they become write-offs. But like an investment into a Lamborghini or what have you versus, hey, what if we can do more philanthropic movements, or what if we could actually help some of the people in our organization that actually have these goals, these visions, and these dreams, to help them create an impactful company to actually like make the world a better place. My gosh, man, like there's so much going on. I don't even want to get political on this interview here today, but like look at what's happening in the world right now. And like we've been conditioned. Like I always ask people, do you believe we've been conditioned for complacency and compliance? And 9 times, I don't think I've ever heard somebody say no. And it's like, you look at our school system, you look at the program, the inflation rate going up right now, and people, I mean, we put ourselves in this scenario because we've been spending more people are consuming than they're actually creating. Right. And I feel like each and every one of us, we're meant to live from a place of overflow and creativity, because each and every one of us were created unique, right? Like there's got to be more to it. Prosperity has got to be more about fulfillment. It's got to be more about purpose, because you can make all the money in the world, but look at Robin Williams, one of the most brilliant men in the world, ended up taking his own life. And how many people that do really, really well and make so much money, you start to realize that money is not going to fill an internal prosperity sized hole. Like in prosperity is more than things. It's well-being. It truly is about well-being. And that's what I feel like, is such an important piece of the equation that they just don't teach in school right now. And that's why we're doing what we're doing. So,
and what I've done, so my kids and I, over the last few weeks, we've been going on a morning walk together. And for those of you that don't know, I've got 6 kids. One is living on his own, and I've got 5 more. Out of those 5, one of them is 2, so she doesn't come with us. But the other 4 do. So it's me and 4 kids, 2 teenagers and 2 younger boys. And we talk, like literally every morning. I ask them, what are the 4? I call them priorities of life. Nice. And they tell me time, health, relationships, money, and then we've discussed like, okay, how do we break down health? Because health isn't just physical health, right? There's mental, emotional, spiritual health. And so we kind of talk about those things. And one of the things that we talk about is how do you, specifically with like mental and emotional health, how do you feel good there? Like, how do you fulfill that? And really what it comes down to is how do you have joy, right? And especially with emotional health. And it comes down to like serving others and learning how to love other people, even if you don't like them, right? I'm sure we'll talk politics eventually on this podcast, but like, even if we don't like Trudeau or Biden, right? Can't stand them. We got to figure out a way to love them, right? Because they are children of God. And that's unfortunately
I'll love them when they go to Antarctica.
Well, I mean, hey, look, I mean, let's be real for a second. Do you guys have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, I got a brother.
You got a brother? Do you always get along with them growing up?
Oh, never. Yeah, very rare.
No. But what do you still do at the core? You still love them, right?
I still love them. Yeah.
I mean, me and my brother didn't get along very much growing up, but I sure, like, I care about him. I love him. And I mean, we're all, like you said, children of God, right? Like, and so at the end of the day, like, and that, listen, like, if anybody's hearing this for the first time, they're like, oh, this kind of like podcast, oh, like these religious, I'm not talking religion. I'm not a religious individual. I'm not big into religion. To me, it's about a relationship. And it truly it comes down to the reality of this. Like, would we all agree on this phone call right now that, like, if we're coming back to pillar number 1, time, in the actual grand scheme of time, what is our life?
Very short.
But a vapor, right? But a blade of grass. It is so small. Like it is so tiny in the grand scheme of time of what has played out so far and what's to come, right? If you want to use the word eternity, like it is it's a blip. It's not, you can't even call it a speed bump because it's smaller than that. It's like the pebble on the road, man. Like it's so tiny that like you have to start asking questions about what am I here for? Why am I here? Like, and if you haven't asked those questions, I would encourage you to dive into those questions, because what we believe, and I'll go ahead and say no. I know, I've experienced it. I've lived it. Like I'm lucky to still be here right now. Okay, I'm not going to get into that whole story today, but I am very, very lucky and fortunate to be alive, just like anyone else. You wake up, that sun comes up. That's a perfect equation. Sun comes up, goes down. We all take these things for granted. That's a perfect equation. We talk about Fibonacci and what we're doing with trading, but who created that perfect equation of all these things moving, and that blessing that we get to experience every day? And each and every one of us have the gift of decision, right? That's the reality of it. We all have the gift of decision. There's this, I heard this one line recently, and it really, really rocked me. It's that without God, we can't. Because here's the reality. Again, you'll hear it in self-development, in personal growth, and all that kind of stuff. You have the power, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you have the power of decision, but you don't know how long you have with those decisions. At the end of the day, you don't have the choice for how long you live. And once you can actually get to a point of like submitting to that concept, you can actually start to think at a higher level, right? From a kingdom principle standpoint. But again, without God, we can't. Like I can't breathe. I can't experience anything that I'm looking at. I can't, like, nothing. Like I can't nothing. Without God, I can't. Without us, he won't. He wants to work in and through us. And I'm not going to get into the history and all that kind of stuff in the good book today, but like he won't, right? We do have to get up, and we do have to decide every day. And then again, coming back to the whole concept of the 4 pillars of prosperity, one of our favorite things to quote, it's in the book of Job, and you can actually Google it. It says, I came into the world naked and I'm leaving just as naked. But as a matter of fact, you're leaving with less than what you came in with. You came in with a body. You're not leaving with the same body. That's the reality of it. So that's an important piece of the equation, that when we look at the 4 pillars of prosperity, why cash flow is the 4th pillar, because you can make all the money in the world, but you can't take it with you. Now, that being said, you can earn at a high level and set up for generations to come. And I think that's wise. And there's some beauty in that, right? Legacy can be built. And I believe that it's part of what we're I don't want to say that everybody's meant to do that, because everybody's made unique for a specific vision, and everybody's going to have a different calling. But it's definitely a desire that I have. I'm going to be real. That's something that's why we're partnered. That's why the 3 of us are together doing what we're doing, right? But Travis, you had a thought. I'll let you continue with.
Well, I was thinking about it today and yesterday. I had seen Warren Buffett say something, or that or the other. If you know Warren Buffett, you know how frugal he is, right? And it's like you were talking about, you can't take the money with you. Might as well spend it. But also, there's also the lineage and the generation afterwards. Well, you might as well leave it too. They're like, where's the happy medium between spending and leaving the legacy? And I was thinking of Warren, and I was like, maybe after his first billion, he probably could have upgraded his car. but he doesn't. He's still in the same old dumpy car, same old nice house. And, but the video I was watching, I believe it was this morning when I was getting my first cup of coffee, was his like cell phone. Someone asked him, are you an Apple or a Samsung guy? Obviously, Brian, you and I know that the only right answer is Apple, but I think that he had like an old flip phone or something, like it was barely working. And it's like, how do you tweet on that, man? And so I don't know. I'm just thinking of this guy, prime example of how to save your money and be like, thoughtful with it. very poor example of how to put it back into the markets or something, you know, like it's good when rich people spend money for the rest of the economy, you know, so there's also that component that we have to think about. So it's good to save, can't leave with it though. So it's good to give it, but only to some people, or should you give, you know, like there's so many variables here.
I think that all comes down to like, if you were created unique in a vision, like, and now we're kind of talking a little bit of spirituality here, prosperity in you. Okay. Let's just be real. John 10:10, the enemy came to seek, kill, and destroy. I came to give you life overflowing, right? How that's expressed through each and every one of us, the truth is that's going to look a little different. And here's how I express that a lot in conversations with people. Number one, like we're all dads on this call. Travis, you have one son, but if you had a daughter or another son, the chances of you loving them all unconditionally, unequivocally, irrevocably, and even go ahead and say equally would be pretty high. Some parents would say, I got a favorite. I'm just going to be real.
Depends on the day.
Depends as it stands right now, Henry's my favorite son.
But the reality is, like, here's a good question though. Can you love each child the same? You might be able to love them equally, but can you love them the same?
No way.
I'm seeing Zach say no, but why? Why can't you love them the same?
I mean, they're different. So the way that they interpret actions or words to equate to love is different, right? They have kind of, it's like they have their own love language, right? So one might appreciate playing a game together. The other one might appreciate just a conversation, you know? So it's,
one might like hugs and snuggling, right? Like that's, and all of that to say, like, look, man, each one of your kids, they're like, there's not one person like them in the world. Like, here's the science: 1 in 400 trillion. That's the science. One in that little burst between mom and dad is 1 in 400 trillion. Okay. So that right there, based on the science, is a freaking miracle. There is not one individual on the face of the earth quite like each and every one of our kids, right? All of that to be said, like, you've got a relationship with your mom. Each one of us have relationships with our parents. We've got relationships with our aunties. We've got relationships with our grandparents. Do they look the same? Absolutely not. They don't. Point being, you got your creator. We're the created. He's the source. We're the resource. Each and every one of us have a relationship with that, whether we like it or not, or even like, because by you saying you don't have a relationship and it's not for me, and I've heard that a few times, it's not for me. Okay, cool. Does that change the fact that you have a relationship with that topic and or entity? Is it a good one? No. Does it exist? Like, here's an example for you. I got a biological father, wasn't in my life for most of my life. We're actually at a point now where we got a good relationship. But because I didn't have a good relationship in the beginning of my life, did it change the fact that he existed?
No. He still
doesn't change the fact that my biological father still exists, right? Don't have a good relationship with him is what it is. We all have I still had a relationship with him. Wasn't good. He existed. Didn't have a relationship. Reality is that is what it is. And so when you take a look at that, like, ultimately, to get back to the case in point of what Travis was saying, which was, what does it look like in regards to distribution with what we earn and what we have? In our stance, when we look at the 4 pillars of prosperity, it's this concept of being entrusted versus entitled. Because we know within this organization that anything we can touch, feel, or put our hands on, or what have you, it doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the source, right? It belongs to God. And so everybody's going to have a different conversation with God. It's going to look different. Some are going to be connected. Some are going to want to give more on that behalf. Like, I love Rick Warren, and I love this idea of what they call a reverse tithe, which is, I want to get to a point where I'm giving way more than I'm consuming, which means that I'm giving away 90% and I'm living off of 10, right? And a lot of people who are religious, like, they believe in this concept of giving 10% and consuming 90, right? Where in the new movement of what Jesus called us to is more of a, like, giving from a place of joy, giving from a place of overflow and abundance, but what that looks like to you and between him is going to look so different. I can't quote and say that Travis feels the same way about the reverse tithe or that Zach does, right? And that's not for me to say.
Something to jump in here though is a lot of people listening right now are probably thinking, oh man, living off of $400, because like $4,000 for most people is kind of that's a good chunk of change. And but we're sitting here, and just to clarify for people listening, living off 10% can still mean that you live off of 10 grand a month. There's possibilities out there.
It could mean living off 100,000 or $1 million, right? Like it could. That's yeah. Like I'm not going to get into all the visions
and all wild, Brian, with the
wild goals and dreams over here. But I mean, the power of compound interest and what we're doing here is like there's no end in sight.
And I think you know what it is though, because this is what, like, if we're talking about success, it comes back to those 4 pillars. Because whenever I was really going for money, it was not like in abundance. You know what I mean? And it's just such an interesting dynamic. Where if you focus on those first 3 pillars, how money opportunity happens, you get blessed with the money. It's like a lot of people, they preach that money is nothing but energy, and energy, it's a high frequency energy, and it has to flow to high frequency individuals. And how do you get that high frequency? Well, focus on the first 3 pillars, right? Time, health, relationships.
Prime example. Why do we say relationship is the foundation of everything that we do in service over sales? Why is that our main focus? Because here's what I know. If I focus on the relationship, what are the chances that relationship is going to unlock more relationships?
Yeah. A big
right.
chance.
And each one of those relationships lead to plenty of opportunities. So again, we have the gift of decision, and that decision, if all we're focused on is money in the conversation, and it's coming from a place of lack because it's coming from just me and my power and I'm like, listen to James and what he says. I'm a nobody. I'm nobody. And that's the truth. Like, let's be real. Like in the big picture, you and your own power is never going to be enough. And it won't. You're weak. You're human. You're going to fall short. We all fall short.
And I'm always curious, like I love listening to entrepreneur interviews and stuff like that, because their journey is always different and they come to that same conclusion in the end. And it's silly how, like, we could talk about this, someone could be listening to this right now and they're not going to do it because for whatever reason, they're a rebel. Oh, somebody said to do this, I can't do it now. We got to do the opposite, right? Or maybe they're just not actually listening. They're just kind of like in their own zone, whatever. I don't know. But for me, and for most people, we have to hit rock bottom before we're like, wait a minute, I'm doing this wrong. I'm doing this backwards. I wonder what would happen if I just said, screw money, and let me focus over here and see what happens with the money. And then all of a sudden it becomes an abundant resource, right? And it's weird. Why do you think, guys, that people tend to have to hit their version of rock bottom before they understand?
It's tying back to what we were saying earlier with the question, do you believe we were conditioned for complacency and compliance? It's conditioning. It's what they're believing what they were told their whole lives. What's the narrative of today? Non-essential, not good enough. And they're believing and they're buying into that. They're not actually believing in themselves and what they were created to be and do. They're not believing in that. They're not believing in the source that created them for that. We live in a culture up society, not a kingdom down society. And the culture up society is this concept of, if so-and-so will think highly of me, and insert the blank. It could be a spouse, it could be a friend, it could be a boss, it could be whoever. If so-and-so will think highly of me, maybe I can think highly of myself. And if I can think highly of myself, then maybe the God or the universe will love me, right? You tack on the universe, although
you just said a second ago, that belief part. It's funny how so many things in this life are tied to belief. As Christians, that's what we're called to do, to believe, right? But that's what you said we also need to do here as people on earth. even before the spirituality. If they don't believe that they can do it, or they have the belief that they're, not meant for as much or whatever. And if you look back on these people, at least the ones that I've listened to and the people who've helped me, the entrepreneurs that I follow and stuff, right? Almost every single one of them, if not every single one of them, is starting out with their cold traffic. People don't know who they are, and they're saying, look, you're going to have to believe this first before it's going to work. You're going to have to believe in me before it's I'm going to be able to help you. And so why, Zach, your question is, why do they have to reach rock bottom? It's belief. They don't believe they can do it. They don't do the right things, no matter how many times you tell them to do it.
When they get to that point, like what you're expressing, it's like they get to the peak of their own power. Because your own power, again, we all fall short. Your power is never going to be enough. I promise. You can't. You can try to say it all you want, but at some point in time, you're going to get sick. At some point in time, you're going to fail. At some point in time, it's just not going to be enough. You're going to let people down. People are going to let you down. That's the reality of it. We're human. We all fall short of the grace of God. And there's so much. You used a term there a second ago, Travis, and I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. But like for our listeners, like, here's what I know about the statistics about a Christian, this Christianity thing, is that I believe that it's like 16%, like back in I think it was I can't remember the exact, it's in a book called Vanishing Grace. At one point, 80% of the world looked at Christianity and they saw it as a good thing. Today, only 16% of people see Christianity as a good thing because it's become a religion. And this is where we really want to be careful, because I've never heard Jesus use the term Christian. Okay. It was meant as a derogatory form. And then they kind of wore it as a badge of pride. The disciples did. And then it kind of became something that it wasn't inherently meant to be. So all of that to say, like, I know your heart and I know you're a man of God. For our listeners, I want to be careful when I use the term Christian, because I know that when people hear Christian, they cringe. And so ultimately, I identify as number one, I don't deny Christ. Christ is my focus. Okay. I'm a citizen of heaven. Christianity is not my badge. Christ resides in me. Yeah.
I hear you. This is like the same thing as like, we do not recommend a broker. We cannot recommend a broker. But we'll tell you who we use. We are
exactly.
So
that's a prime example, exactly. But also to come back to it, what Zach was saying here too about like, what is it that causes that? There are, again, conditioned for complacency and compliance. But let's go ahead and take a look at this historical parable of the story of the talents. In the story of the talents, you got three types of people. You got three talent holders in this story. Okay. So each one of us has talents. Back in the day, these talents represented money. Okay. But each one were given specific amounts of talents by the leader or their lord at that time. Back in the day, like we're talking old history here, right? And the first one buries the talent while the Lord was away. And because he was scared, believed all the lies, was scared, was like, you know what? I don't want to lose this. I don't want to like be under the wrath of him. If I lose this, they buried it. The second talent holder actually, duplicated it, did pretty good. And the third talent holder, he saw the opportunity in being entrusted with this, and he wanted to be entrusted with more. And I believe that we're all created to be entrusted with more. God wants to give us more. What kind of father wouldn't want to give you more, right? I mean, like, look at it with your kids. Don't you want to give your kids more? Like, but there's a proper time and place. We got to protect our kids, right? Like, for example, my kid comes to me at 8 p.m. at night and he says, "Hey, Dad, I want a Diet Coke." The answer is yes, just not now. I'm not going to give you a Diet Coke an hour before your bedtime. You kidding me? That's ridiculous, right? Like, it's not good for you. We got to find moments of time for these things to happen, but I want you to have it. I want you to enjoy the experience. I want you to, I want to entrust my kids with more. But that's the deal, right? Like, we all are meant to be entrusted with more. That third talent holder did so well. And it was written in the American Standard Version that he traded, that he invested. And then the Lord gave a portion of the first talent holder, the second talent holder gave it to the third. Now, when we take a look at those three, you've got three types of individuals. If we're going to look practical, high level, I see a victim, I see a survivor, and I see a victor, right? And in a lot of ways, we might even see an employee, an entrepreneur, and an entrepreneur, right? Like these guys, they each played a different role. And it really comes down to which position do you want to decide to operate in? We have a choice every day. Which one am I going to operate in? Which one do I decide? And that's why I always say we're the third talent holders, and we're working with people to help them to move through each one of those positions. There are a lot of people that come to us that are living a victim mentality lifestyle because they've been conditioned for that. And we actually have to instill hope in them. We actually have to instill the truth in them. We actually have to, help them with their heart set and their mindset. There's some people that are surviving. We got to help them break through the survivor mode into the victory mode, right? And how do we do that? I can't take, just as much as everyone else have decisions, the gift of decision, I have to allow them to make the proper decisions, right? It's just the reality of it. But I hope that's kind of coming back to Zach's point of what do you guys think that causes that? And for me, those are all the elements that kind of cause that process of what we're experiencing in the world today. Is that too many people are living as a first talent holder in fear because they were conditioned for it.
What's interesting too is that I think at some point in time, even after you are a victor, you will fall back into one of those other categories. There are points of trial, points of challenge, and it's unavoidable. And you have to be aware that you're gonna get hit with it throughout your life, your career, what have you, your family relationships. One of the things that I used to do a lot, and I really don't know why I stopped, but I used to listen to this podcast called Business Wars. And it's so interesting. It's like a
Business
story.
Wars,
Yeah.
WARS.
Yeah. So it was always taking a couple of competitors in business and how did they end up where they are today? So they would do things like DC and Marvel, Microsoft and Apple, right? They would do those kinds of things. Fascinating stories, and the way they do it is so entertaining. But one thing that I've learned from listening to all these different big, huge businesses from their start to where they are is that they've never actually made it. You think, when will I make it? Or when will my business be finally there at this destination? It never happens. And the reason it never happens is even as they get bigger, guess what? Now all of a sudden they're getting sued for whatever, like McDonald's back in the day sued for their hot coffee, right? Or sued for oil that apparently makes you fat. Who would have known? So those kinds of things that just come up unexpectedly, that is going to happen forever. You can't avoid those. You're never going to actually make it.
It's just like the budget thing. People are like, I don't have enough money. It's like, well, maybe you just don't know how to spend it right. Because what tends to happen is when people make more money, they have more bills. They have in the same spot. They had the same amount of cash flow. You look at the percentages, they still don't have enough, kind of thing, right?
Well, it's a consumption thing we were talking about, because you feel entitled to have everything you have, and therefore, you're creating this. People don't realize it, that while they're keeping up with the Joneses, they're crippling themselves.
I have kind of a cool solution to that I've been doing. That's been fun. So if you're having trouble, because you're overspending and it, because I used to fall in that boat when I was an engineer. That's the story of my life as an engineer. And so something that I found that was really fun is you strategically spend on something that will always be in front of you. So for example, a wallet. I feel like this is one of the most important decisions of your life, is what wallet do you use? Because you pull that thing out on a daily basis. It's always on you. And you have to look at it on a daily basis. Now, when you pull it out, is it falling apart? Are there holes in it? Is it super old leather? You don't feel good about showing it off, like Travis's. Or is it something that you're proud of? You pull it out and you feel wealthy just by looking at your wallet. That's a simple one. Another one would be your shower head. And so Brian brought his wallet. That's awesome. That's what I'm talking about.
It's got my kids on it, man.
That's
My wife got this for me for Father's Day. It's got my sons on it when they were at that age. And so that's my inspiration. Every time I open up this wallet, I make an investment or what have you. Yeah.
So stuff like that. Or the other one, Brian, I mentioned when you were getting your wallet was a shower head. Something so simple, but you use it pretty much every day, at least I hope. Right. And so if you have like a really nice shower, every time you get in the shower, you're gonna be like, man, I'm wealthy. Like you feel better instead of constantly having to buy new stuff. You can just be very strategic and it feels like you have something new all the time.
Now that I would also like to extrapolate further into the environment of where you are, where you live, where you reside, where you go, kind of thing, right? It's not just about like, okay, I can replace this shower head and it'd be nicer. That's I love that, by the way. I love the idea, like, I feel great because my shower head is great. Like, that's awesome. But what about the rest of your house? Is it clean? Do you take care of it? Do you have pride with where you live there? You know, I know that I personally, not everyone does this, but I personally get really irritable when the house is not clean. And so it's easier for me to have the motivation to do it. But regardless, I don't know anybody who like walks into a hotel and isn't like, this is nice. But why is it nice? They go through leaps and bounds to make the hotel experience as comfortable of an environment as possible. And it's always clean, you know, fresh sheets, beds made, the curtains are pulled out, sun shining through, desk is clear, there's no clutter. Like those are things that just ubiquitously throughout people is nice. And if you have your environment nicer and more tidy and kept, well, unless you look at my office, Einstein had a messy office too. Okay, my office is an exception. Everything else in my house is immaculate, but my office has always got papers everywhere, right? But that's how I thrive. But, you know, people need to think about this is like, you know, if you want to feel better, have that rush of energy in the morning, have the nice shower head, absolutely. But also, is your bathroom picked up?
Right.
Toothpaste on the mirror and stuff, like clean up, you know?
Yeah. Well, that comes back to the word entrusted again. How are you exuding the fact that you're being entrusted with your surroundings? What do you like? And this comes back to the pillars again, because like Zach, you just finished saying, you know, with the 3 talent holders that you're always going to kind of move through. And that goes with each category. Okay. That means like, what talent holder are you doing in the pillar of time? Okay, what talent holder are you playing as in the health category? Am I being a 3rd talent holder? Am I being a good steward with this temple that was provided to me and entrusted to me? What about your relationships? Which talent holder am I in my relationships? You know, which talent holder am I with my money? Like, am I being a victim in each one of these categories, a survivor, or am I being a victor in each one of these categories? And it will constantly shift. There are marriages that are on the brink of like, you know, we're playing victim roles, right? There are business relationships that some people are playing victim roles. And like, I mean, you guys have witnessed me go through that with my emotions and dealing with that. And you've helped me and empowered me to move from that position into the, you know, like I don't sit in that survivor mode or that victim mode for too long. And 9 times out of 10, every time I get there is because the itty bitty shitty committee and me sitting here thinking too much about what other people think, when it's, again, what we were talking about before, culture up versus kingdom down. And we'll close with this, I think, because we got to tie this up. And maybe next week we can kind of further expound on this concept of moving from, you know, victim, survivor, and victor. I think that would be a lot of fun. But
there's going to be a bunch of just little things that we throw in as far as like, well, how do you move from the victim to the survivor in each one of these categories? I'm sure we're going to focus more intently on one thing at a time, right? Totally. Just like the whole getting out of the itty bitty shitty committee, like you're just talking about, a really, really simple solution for most people: go outside and get some sun for 2 minutes. Literally, it resets your brain and your chemicals in your body. Little things like that. We'll talk all the little secrets, right?
That, or something as simple as, actually carve out some time to go serve the homeless, get some perspective, go do something. Like, you'd be surprised how simple it is to smile at somebody when you open a door for them. Like, all of these pieces of the equation, like, I kid you not, like these little tiny things will make great deposits within you to be able to shift the frequency.
Yeah.
Like if you're coming from a place of lack and you're not sure what to do next and where the heck to go and like how you're going to make more money, blah, 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 this and that, slow down and go serve.
Yeah.
And do it even
Solid.
if it feels weird at first. Just go do it. And so, like, again, we're coming to a close here. This concept we were talking about, culture up. So culture up was this idea that if so-and-so fill in the blank will think highly of me, I can think highly of myself. And if I think highly of myself, maybe God or the universe. And I'm just going to like, I know what I know and what my system is for my belief. But some people, they'll categorize it as universe. I just want to keep this blanket because I respect everybody and I love each and every one of you. I'm called to love you whether or not we agree. Okay. That's the reality of it. But that is the culture up. Kingdom down. It's this principle of this is who God says I am. And if y'all don't know who God says you are, and even if you're on the edge of trying to like, I don't know about this, I'm not really, hey, this isn't about religion. This is about the truth of who God says you are. Go ahead and Google it. If you want to get the link, you can reach out to us. I'll send you a link that'll give you a list of all the things that God says you are. And when you can just accept and embrace that, what other people think and feel about you starts to become a mute scenario. Okay. And that's an important thing because at the end of the day, again, when we talk about time, when we talk about like even one of the biggest questions that I ask people is what's your why? Simon Sinek will say, start with why. I believe we need to start with who. And here's why, because your why can be jaded. It can be selfish. And a lot of people will say, typically when I ask them what their why is, my wife and kids, here's a hard question for you. What happens if they die? Because that's a very, very like unfortunate scenario. Travis's best friend yesterday left behind a couple of kids. Okay. That stuff happens every single day. What happens if they die? What next? What are you putting your identity and your inspiration and everything else into? So I love my kids and my wife and like unconditionally, unequivocally, irrevocably. Can't change that. But the reality is they don't belong to me. They are entrusted to me. And so I just want to encourage you all today on this. You know, if you're listening to this, we want to wish you all the best in health, wealth, and relationships. We're looking forward to spending more time with you on this podcast, getting your feedback. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Cheers, everyone. God bless.